I have a microphone, so I hope you can all hear me. Where you're at right now is what a whole lot of people got involved in and made happen over the years, and especially the riders, you guys and gals, over the last many years. Besides the scholarships, besides the healthcare academy, besides the scholars or the educational fund, supporting the post, those $10 entry, donations you make at when you register, and the raffle tickets that you buy when you get back there, and the 50/50s that we do. This is what it buys. This is what we purchased with it. Just so you know that we are good stewards of your money and your time, that you come and do this with us. This is what we did. And I'm going to talk a little bit about the layout here. That statue there, that World War I statue, has been here since 1923, when the park was established in 21, and then there's only 17 of those statues in the United States, and Ladysmith's got one, and it's probably one of the best ones of a World War II soldiers out there. And I've heard many, many people that have come through this park while we were doing this tell us they've never seen one quite like that. And that's a bronze statue there. That statue was never lit up at night or anything like that. When we put this in and we lit this up, I went to the city and I says, if you guys aren't going to light it, we are. And we're going to pay for it. And they says, bring me the bill. And we'll see what we can do. And he was a guy I served with for 20 years, and they paid for the lighting on that. Olenek Concrete gave us $150 or $120 a yard concrete for $50 to put this in here. Lampert Yards donated $2,000 for this brick. They supplied all this paver block to go around this here. Gray Electric charged us $1,700 for all those lights, and that was just cost. That's not his labor or anything like that. Skid Steer Enterprise did all the excavating and cut all that block around there, and they worked 2.5 weeks. They charged us a week. They get donated a week, 3 people, to put that in. This year, and you wondered what this here, this is about $19,000. A guy, a sergeant major buddy of mine down in Milwaukee, I served on a board one time, and he said to me, he says, hey John, he says, I heard about your boy, and he says, and if you need a headstone, he worked at a monument company down in Nashatoa, a suburb by Menominee Falls, Milwaukee, Wisconsin. He says, if you need a memorial for your son, he says, come see me. Well, it was already late, I already had one. But I called him up about 5 years later, 6 years later, and I said, hey Mike, I said, does that still stand? And he says, here's what we're thinking of doing with our post and with our Honor to Fallen motorcycle ride money. And he says, absolutely. Those 3 walls with those 3, plus that, base, plus that, Warrior Ethos, they're the Army Warrior Ethos. Engraved, all the bronze, delivered and set up, $18,000. Can't beat that. $18,000. I said to him, I says, how can you do that for that kind of money? And I had an estimate already, just on the 3 panels, not counting any graving or any bronze, and it was $32,000 from a different place. So you add all that up, and that's what you get. He gave us a deal. He gave this county, this city, a gift. He gave us a gift in memory of these guys here, these 195 guys. I said to him, I says, how can you do that? And he says, you got to know that, and he's my age, he says, you got to know that when you leave this world, you left something behind a little bit better than it was when you were here. You got to do that. It was quite an honor. This here was 2 guys that I served with in Iraq. They went and had some patriotic items and that, and they've been to our rides before. Well, I think 2009 was the last time they were up here. One's from Ohio and one's from Virginia. And they went and sold these patriotic plaques and things like that, and jewelry boxes and stuff at flea markets, craft shows, and things like that. And they raised this, and I know what this cost. I know they were $4,000, and you can get them for $3,500 to a family of the fallen. So I don't know what they got it for, but they got it is by selling all those things, and then they shipped it to me and my wife when she was alive. And we kept that for 2 or 3 years out at Club 8, waiting for a place or something to do with it. Didn't want to put it at the cemetery because I felt that it would get lost out there, and it didn't really represent the cemetery with everybody in there when it should be at a memorial. Well, when our post decided to do this, that was a given. That's where it was going to go. So the benches that you see here are representative. There's a veterans organization of every organization within the county. There are 9 of them, veterans organizations in the county. That one's Ladysmith. Some are Sheldon, some are Weyerhaeuser, some are Bruce, but they're representative of all our communities within Rusk County. The AMVETS Post, us, don't have a bench. But if you look at the back of this center tablet, on the back side, you will see our emblem of the AMVETS Post 127 on the back side, and the year that it was dedicated in 2015. Now I'm going to talk a little bit about these boys here. Geographically by address, there's a binder that we put together of all the newspaper clippings. The Historical Society has 3 copies. They gave me 1. I went through them, and there's a lot more information in there that I don't have that I could extract, but I spent a few nights going through extracting some information and reading them again and again, and I just want to share some of that with you. Geographically within the county, 67 of these boys that are on this wall are from Ladysmith, or had an address of Ladysmith. Now that could have been rural or in the city. 67. 31 are from Bruce. 24 are from Weyerhaeuser. 16 from Hawkins. That's it. Now there's a city here that had 15, and those 15, that village is not in Rusk County. It's a 1.5 miles north of the county line, and we went through it today. It's excellent. We went through it up there just before we hit D, County D. And they lost 15 boys. Well, why did we include them in this here memorial? And the reason is those boys went to school in Bruce, down in the county. They went to school there. They married Bruce girls. Their brothers and sisters worked in this county, okay? Their moms and dads. So Exon had 15. And I'll tell you what, they paid a hell of a price. Some of the little villages really got hit hard. Sheldon had 11. In the southeast corner. Glenflora over here, 8. Highland Lake, down in the far corner over there, 8. Conrad, a few miles down here, 6. Tony, we went through Tony, 6. Ingram, 3. World War I, this boy's right over here. These 2 columns right over here. The average age of these guys here is 24.8 years. Young men. World War II, these guys. All of these. All of these. World War II. 95 of them. 23.6 years. Those were the popular wars, so to speak, if you have a popular war, because everybody got on the bandwagon, the whole country turned over and started supporting. Now when you had the unpopular wars like Korea, 5 years later after World War II, and then you had Vietnam, where nobody supported them, the age dropped because not everybody was volunteering and getting on it, but they still had a war to fight. Korea average age was 21.8. And Vietnam's average age was 21.0. That means they had 1 day to buy a beer on an average. They couldn't even buy a beer today. Think about that for a minute. World War I, facts. These guys here, 2 of them died of accidents. 26 died of disease. 26. There was a pneumonia and influenza that went through the world at that time. It was called H1N1. Ever hear of that? Spanish flu. That happened way back in 1918, 1919, 1920. Killed 20 million people worldwide. Swept through the trenches of France, Germany, when they were there. And the guys were dying left and right. You guys that were in the service, you know what, when you were in the barracks and that, one guy got a cold, you send your kids to school, one kid gets a cold, they all get a cold. You have healthy kids all summer, send them to school, they get sick, right? All right, same thing when you're Army barracks, or Marine Corps barracks, or Navy ship, or whatever. That stuff went through that stuff just like so fast to kill them all. 17 of them, 17 were killed in action, died of wounds. And remember, 26 died of disease. So there were more killed by disease in that war than in combat. World War II, these 95 guys. 15 died of accidents, 6 died of disease, 71 were KIA or died of wounds in combat. Another 6 were KIA or died of wounds as POWs. 5 in the Japanese prison camps and 1 in the German. Korea, over here. 4 died of accidents. 4 died of accidents. 1 of disease. 6 KIA died of wounds, and 2 died in Chinese prison, North Korea. 2 of them in Chinese prison camps. Some other interesting facts. 3 of these boys were killed on their birthday. 1 was killed the day after his birthday. 1 was killed the day before. 1 was KIA, killed in action on the last day of World War I, November 11th, very last day. 1 in World War II was killed off of Okinawa on a USS Pennsylvania. They got hit by a kamikaze 3 days after they dropped the 2nd atomic bomb. So the war was pretty much over with. The Emperor already indicated they were going to surrender. They had already made their decision on that day. That day, the plane hit that ship and killed them. 1 of them served in World War I and World War II. Gerald Maloney, right here. He was an officer. He served in World War I. He put a book together on Rusk County and the Great War in 1923 or 21. He put that book together and he put a bunch of pictures in there of all the guys. He listed all the ones that were killed in action in that. He died in 1943 in Australia training soldiers down there of a heart attack. He was a lieutenant colonel. He was also the youngest sheriff of Rusk County at age 23. From 1921 to 1923. When he came back from World War I, he got elected sheriff and he served 1 term. And he was the youngest sheriff of Rusk County. And that was Maloney. 4 of these boys, 3 in World War I and 1 in World War II, served in the Canadian Army. World War I started in 1914. America didn't get involved until 1917. They didn't wait. They didn't go to Canada to escape the draft. They went to Canada to join up and go to France, and they did. And they died there. And there may have been more that went there and came back. I don't know that. But these 3 guys from World War I, and then 1, Cameron is his name. Over here, he in World War II, he got killed in Normandy. Well, I think it was about like D plus 14. 2 days plus 14 days. One was killed in Alaska on an island of Attu. There was 2 islands that the Japanese took before we owned it as a U.S. possession, but it was not a state at the time. But he got killed in Alaska. Where's Doc? Doc, Nagel. Is he here? No. All right. A guy by the name of Le Captain. Bernard Le Captain. He was a Navy corpsman. And all you Marines know who they are, and all the Navy guys know who they are. He was on the island of Guam, when they took the island of Guam in 1944, and he was awarded the Navy Cross, which is second only to the Medal of Honor. for bravery. He was dragging wounded Marines to gullies and treating them, and he was treating other Marines under fire, and he was getting shot. And when it got time to, he was done with the one, he couldn't get up to go next, and he died before they could even treat him. So some bravery up here, these guys. Churchill. Harold Churchill. After parachuting out of a B-17 bomber on a run to Berlin, he was killed on the ground by German labor service member, a civilian. And I know the man was unarmed because my uncle was on a B-17 in summer of 44. And this was March of 45, but in the summer of 44, around midsummer, almost a year before this, they took all their sidearms away because they were losing too many guys on the ground. They were killing them. They were coming down and they knew they were armed. So rather than even do anything, they were shooting them. And so the civilians were obviously pissed off anyway because their houses were burning and everything else, you know. So they didn't have any mercy on our flyers that were coming down. Well, they said in the newspaper that he was resisting arrest. He was on a, I know he was. They took all their sidearms away, all the flyers, and when they sent a communique to Hitler and they told him our boys are coming down unarmed. So they knew about it. Enthoff. Earl Enthoff over here. His parents received a telegram saying that he was missing in action. 5 days, or a few days later, they received a second telegram that says he was returned to duty. They found him. He came back. They received a third telegram that said, oops, he's killed in action. Can you imagine that? 3 telegrams like that. Your hopes are dashed, and then you have hope again that they found him, he came back, and then a few days later you get the third one that says, oh, sorry, we were wrong on 2 accounts. There are 6 sets of brothers on this wall. John and William Waters over here. World War I. 2 months after the war ended, they died 4 days apart. One was hit by a streetcar in France, and the second brother died from an accidental gunshot wound in Koblenz, Germany. 4 days apart. Mom, here's 2 telegrams. The Huron brothers, John and Carl, up here. Carl was a gunner on a B-25 that crashed in the Atlantic on a training exercise in 43, and John was killed in action March of 45, 6 weeks before the war ended. March of 45 in Germany, he was awarded the Silver Star. The Nelson brothers, Archie and Elwyn, they're over here. Archie and Elwyn, I think they're from Weyerhaeuser or Exlin area. They went to North Africa on a troop ship together. One problem, the German U-boat sunk that boat, killed them both. One of the other guys that's on that wall was the same thing happened the day before. His troop ship got sunk. So there's 3 of them. But the 2 boys were together. You ever hear the Sullivan brothers? The 5 Sullivan brothers? They were all on one ship and it went down and all 5 died. So you got the Huron boys, or the Nelson brothers, they were on the same troop ship and went down. Frank and John Patricki. John was killed in action in Italy in 1944, and Frank died of wounds 3 days after being wounded on Iwo Jima in February of 45. He was wounded on the 21st and he died on the 24th on Iwo Jima. The Leonard brothers. Over here. Art and Carl. Carl was killed in a motorcycle accident in Germany in July of 45. The war ended in May. He was a courier for officers running a motorcycle, had an accident, he got killed. Art was killed in a vehicle accident in February of 46. He was killed in Korea. They were occupying Korea at the time. The war in Korea didn't start till 50, so this is 46. But it was like 6 months after the Japanese had already surrendered. So the 2 boys died after the war ended in 2 accidents. vehicle accident and a motorcycle accident. Solberg brothers. Oh, Korea. Over here. Milnor and Wendell, Korea. Milnor was missing in action in Korea. His body was never recovered. He was declared dead in 1954. The war supposedly ended in 53. Wendell returned from Okinawa at about the same time to be medically discharged, but he died in his sleep before he was discharged. He was 21. DeMars. Wayne DeMars. He wrote his parents a letter, and he told them of a live fire exercise. And all you guys that were in the service had a live fire exercise, and I don't remember me going through it. And on that exercise, that there was an exercise, and he wrote in there, there's this live fire exercise that's coming up tomorrow, where you crawl under barbed wire and a machine gun shoots over you by 30 inches. You remember that? I remember that. You can lay in there and you see them tracers coming overhead, and you didn't dare. Well, the parents got that letter, but they got the telegram that he was killed in a training accident the next day. So he went to that accident, or that training exercise, and something happened on that range. So that's what I have right now. There's more out there to look at, and things like that, but I just kind of in the last few days this week, I took some time and I went through the binders, and I knew we were stopping here, and I just kind of wanted to give you an idea. There's a lot of heroics. These boys were young men that like some of us that when we were all young, that went out and did some things, and our country asked us to do that, and we did that for us so we can enjoy days like this. And well, that's what we do, and we just thank you for coming. We're going to go back down to the VMA.
Sergeant Major,
yeah.
can you tell us about the soldiers?
Oh, this guy was on vacation in Pennsylvania, Gettysburg. Went for a motorcycle ride out there. And one of the guys that was with us was going to buy a Civil War statue about that high. And they said, go out by Biglersville, 6 miles out of Gettysburg. They got 6 acres of concrete lawn ornaments. So we went out there. There was a group of four couples. We went out there and we looked, and we're walking around, and we got 6 acres. I mean, this whole park was full of ornaments. And we were walking through, and there were gargoyles and gorillas and giraffes and elephants and ladybugs and turtles and you name it. There is everywhere, everywhere. You come around the corner of the building of the gift shop, and I looked and I saw that, and I went, oh my God! I wonder what he had to have for that. So I went inside, and the boss wasn't around. So I talked to the lady there, and she says, well, if he sold it, he said he'd have to have $3,000 for it, and that's concrete. And I says, oh, okay. Well, I got thinking about it. I said, I don't know if we got $3,000 right now, but we have a ride coming up, and that was a fall ride like this. I said, I don't know, after paying for this, I didn't know if we had money for that. So we waited a month. Waited a month. The Monday after the ride, I called the guy. His name was Guy. And I called the guy, and I said, his name was Guy. And I says, Guy, I says, do you still have that statue of the soldier carried the other soldier? And he says, yeah. And I went, great. I says, great, we would like to buy it. I told him who I was and what the post and that. He says, it's not for sale. I went, oh, shit. And I says, well, I talked to the girl, and she said that if you sold it, you'd have to have $3,000 for it. He goes, yeah, if I sold it, but I'm not selling it. I want to keep it. And I said, well, I'm with the AMVETS Post, yada yada, and I even threw my former rank out there. Still didn't do any good. He says, yeah, he says, I've had a lot of calls. He says, and I just think it's one-upmanship that one post wants it in front of their building so they can go like this to the post next door and say, look what we got, you don't have it, kind of thing. And I said, well, I can't speak for them, but I can speak for my post. And I said, we want to do a memorial. We want to recognize all our fallen servicemen from the county. we think it would be fitting in a public park that's where it would go. He said, well, let me think about it. He said, I'll get back to you on Friday. That was on a Monday. 5 days went by and I didn't hear nothing. And I'm sitting there wondering, geez, how do I get, when's that call coming? Finally, I couldn't wait anymore. Friday, I called him. And I says, Guy, I says, what do you, should make a decision? And I'm sitting in a chair like this. And I got the phone in my ear and he says, well, I talked it over with my girlfriend and we felt that, your situation, that it would probably be the best place for it. He says, we're going to sell it to you. I almost slid out of the chair. I says, now how do we get it here? This was on a Friday. He says, I'll load it up and I'll bring it to you. 2 o'clock on Sunday, he arrived from Gettysburg with that statue in his trailer standing up. 2 days later, not even 2 days later, he brought that statue and delivered it to us. And then we put the plex up. Because this is concrete, water pools in the bottom. Water will pool up in his elbow, pulls behind the buttstock, and pools up on the chin strap up by his ear. And if that freezes, that's going to chip that out. So we had to spend another $3,000 for that. So we got about $30,000 from the 2 rides that we do in this memorial. And we have, and I got it on my phone right here, a bald eagle, bronze bald eagle. Got his feet out, ready to land on something. And he is so pretty. He's got the white tail, he's got the white head, he's got the color shading with it, the beak and the eyes. It's just so real. I was very fussy. I was offered, I called my buddy that did the wall and I said, you got anything in in granite? He says, yeah. He sent me the picture. And it's, it's almost like a gargoyle. I don't want that. I want an eagle that looks like an eagle. I've always seen eagles. They either look like chickens or they look like parrots, but they don't look like friggin' eagles. So I'm pretty fussy. I'm pretty fussy when I look at eagles. The damn thing better look like a friggin' eagle, because I don't want it. Well, we're going to get this eagle. It's $10,500. I found it from a guy out in Idaho, and it's a $15,000 eagle. Said he'd give it to our post for $10,500, and we put $1,000 down on it, so we're still raising the money for it. And but we're going to put that eagle right here, coming this way, right after. So when you're standing here, that eagle, and he's going to be not far above that, so like he's just ready to land and light on that wall. So I'm going to tell you what, he's going to be gorgeous. Gorgeous. So, any questions? What we do? He just asked me if I want some money, and I said, sure.
We want to help buy an eagle.
You got it, buddy.
Everybody's sick of seeing me, so I'll make it short and sweet. Plus, I don't speak well in front of groups, so. Well.
Wrong checkbook.
Spend at the last stop, huh?
They told me just pretend everyone's naked, and that's kind of creeping me out a little bit. Not for everybody. Anyway, I work for my local deals and also for Apex Insurance here in town. We donate every ride, we do the coupon book and then support with some money. This year, for this ride, I'd like to give you another check from my local deals for $347.
Oh, wow, great.
And then from my local deals and Apex Insurance, another $125.
Oh, wonderful. Wonderful.
I'd like to thank people that buy the books, also the people that sponsor and put things in the books, but mostly the veterans that let us sell.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you for what you're doing. Thank you very much. Thank you. $500 closer to that eagle. And the goal, this ride, next ride, and the fall ride, is to have that eagle sitting here, and on November 11th, Veterans Day next year, we would like to dedicate that eagle and have it mounted there, and unveil it on Veterans Day next year. So that's what we're shooting for. Let's hope we can make that happen. Now we're going to go back over there, have a chicken dinner. 3 minutes.